Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Friar Attack podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about Mackenzie Gore and what is happening with them, current news, what we think is going to happen, and what we believe will happen with him by the end of the year. So, Isaac, that being said, apparently Mackenzie Gore is quote unquote fixed. His mechanics look good, his fast velocity is back up, and he is currently hitting his spots, and his location is a lot better compared to what it was. So, with that being said, what do you expect for the rest of the year for Mackenzie Gore?
I'm hoping to see him by September. I know AJ Preller mentioned earlier in the year that he's hoping to get some innings out of Mackenzie Gore in the majors this year. He mentioned that he's hoping that Mackenzie can have some sort of impact on the Padres this year. So that would be absolutely, that'd be huge considering the starting rotation hasn't exactly been cutting it. We saw that his fastball velocity has gone up ever since the whole thing where he was, only throwing 89 to 91. And at that time, a bunch of people were in favor of trading him. Chase and I were talking about it. You don't trade that kind of potential at his lowest because there are many teams out there that will bank on that potential and say, hey, let's buy low on this guy, and I'm sure we're going to fix him, and he's going to turn into the ace that the Padres expect him to be. So hopefully gonna see him in September. Chase was mentioning that his mechanics look good now. His fastball looks good. So hopefully he starts getting his other stuff to start looking good as well. And I think he should be making some starts here in the minors soon. Down in El Paso, he had a 5.85 ERA, a 1.8 WHIP. So those aren't exactly encouraging numbers, but at the same time, he wasn't exactly the Mackenzie Gore that we knew he was at that time. So hopefully in Arizona, he got his confidence up. That blister problem healed. His mechanics are fixed, especially that fastball velocity, like they mentioned. But hopefully, I think if he goes in El Paso and he throws around a 3.4 ERA, I'm cool with that. I think you bring him up. Have him throw 4 innings, 5 innings, whatever it is in the majors. Even if it's a 4 ERA, only because we know that some people have, some people just do better in the majors than they do in the minors for some reason. Fernando Tatis being a good example of that. So, yeah, that's what I think of Mackenzie Gore, especially because, it's time for this rotation to get kind of a wake-up call. It's time for them to say, if you're not going to cut it, one of you guys are going to be out for a guy that we fully expect to be part of the future for the next 10 years, hopefully. And if you're not going to cut it for the next 2, then you're done. Mr. Blake Snell, for example, is the primary guy that I think of when I say that. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
So let's say this. Let's give a hypothetical here. Gore, gets transferred to AAA El Paso, let's say next week, because he's finally done in Arizona. He's done his rehab. His blister's better. His mechanics look good. His fastball location's better. His velocity's back. And 4 starts in a row, he goes 5, let's say 5 innings, because let's say they have him on a pitch count. His strike-to-ball ratio is finally a lot better. His location's better. His strikeouts are back up. He limits the walks. And he says, let's say he gets about 8 strikeouts a game. I know that's a little high, but let's just hypothetical. He gives you 4 starts, 5 innings, maybe 1 run ball, 8 strikeouts, and limits the walks. Do you call him up after that 4th start, or do you still, kind of just be like, he's a September call-up when the rosters expand?
I mean, I think you ride the hot hand. I think you call him up while he's at his highest point, while he's the most confident, because I think mentally you're going to be thinking like, oh shoot, I was good enough to get the call up. I've been doing really good lately. You're going to go into this major league start super confident. I don't know what the schedule looks like here soon. I see that in the end of August, we're going to be facing the Diamondbacks 3 times. So that would be a really, really, really good opportunity to start getting Mackenzie Gore some major league innings. After that, the schedule gets a little tougher. An Angels start would be really nice. Later towards the year, you got, the Braves aren't exactly a team you can sleep on. So I think a start against the Diamondbacks would be solid for him. You mentioned that if he has 4 good starts in a row, 5 good starts in a row, would I call him up? My answer, yes. Obviously, I mentioned earlier, you got to bring up a guy at his hottest point. And I think especially, because his confidence, it seems like his confidence has been really low. That's going to be a really good starting point for him. If he can get his fastball back up to 93, 94, I think that's important, obviously, for a guy that's going to be throwing some major league innings. So I think what I would do, I'd get him out there, throw him 4 innings, have Lamet throw another 2, hopefully, and go from there.
And in the case that he is just a September call-up, but he ends up making some quality starts during that September call-up, do you think it calls for a 6-man rotation, or do you think that, Ryan Weathers, who has been struggling, and if he continues to struggle, that he just works out of the bullpen and Gore replaces his spot?
Well, I think maybe next year you go with that 6-man rotation and Mackenzie Gore does get called up and he succeeds. I think Ryan Weathers will be fine. I know his baseball savant numbers earlier in the year when we talked about them, they weren't that good. And he did just come off a horrendous outing, but I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be able to fix that. It's just one of those bumps in the road for a young pitcher. So I think in terms of the playoffs, if we're able to make it and Mackenzie Gore is having some really nice starts, I think you can put Mackenzie Gore in the bullpen kind of the way we saw Mike Clevenger was coming out of the bullpen for the Indians at one point. Ryan Cohen came on. He was talking about how important it is to have a pitcher, a starting pitcher in the bullpen, such as I think he mentioned Chris Paddock. So in this case, it would be Mackenzie Gore. So maybe later on in the year, you do a 6-man rotation up into the playoffs, then you go into that 3-4-man rotation. You start having guys like Paddock, Weathers, Gore. Obviously, the Mets can be coming out of the bullpen anyway, but you go through 3 hot hands going into the playoffs, and you just ride your guys. And I think it's very possible if we make the playoffs, we'll go starting pitcher by committee, or we'll go with an opener and go with the bullpen the rest of the way because this bullpen is fantastic. So, yeah, I think you do a 6-man rotation later on in the year if Mackenzie Gore succeeds. However, if they don't want that, you take out the guy that's not as hot, which will either be probably Paddock or Weathers. I don't think they're willing to take out Snell, unfortunately. So, yeah, that's what I got.
So, as of right now, we have Darvish, Snell, Musgrove, and Weathers. Lamet will be coming back possibly mid-August. He starts his rehab assignment August 4th. Paddock is probably not going to be back until the end of August. I believe oblique strains are really, really wonky for all MLB players because there's a lot of twisting and turning, and you can really re-injure that really easily and be out even longer. So in that case, would you rather see Kinnear up the entire time? Would you like to see Gore come up and make a spot start if he has a couple good starts in AAA? Or would you rather see Adrian Martinez in AA, who currently, I believe, has a 2.2 ERA throughout the entire season? And I think he just threw 5 scoreless outings again in his latest start.
I think the obvious answer for me is if Mackenzie Gore is able to go out there and provide some really good starts, I think it's you bring him up. You see what he's got in the majors. Maybe he performs to a really good level, and then that could be the spark that these Padres need to go into September, start winning a lot of ball games, potentially put themselves in a little bit of division in the NL West race for the division. Because right now it feels like they're out of it. It feels like they're kind of just settling for a wild card spot. I hope that's not the case. But if that's not the case for Mackenzie Gore, I think the better option is Adrian Martinez. You brought up his stats. I've been seeing a lot of good things on him lately. I think it's best to get him up there and get him throwing 4 or 5 innings a game. I like Kinnear, but I just don't like the idea that he's only going, 3 innings? I want to say he went 3 innings against the Rockies. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But I like the idea more of a guy that's going to go 5 at least. And obviously, Blake Snell is not that guy. There's obviously guys in the rotation that can't do that consistently, but that's why I'm more in favor of a guy that would go 5 innings, such as Adrian Martinez, who I hope did let go 4 or 5 at least. So that 5th spot is definitely open right now because Paddock is obviously, you brought up oblique strains. Obviously, those can get pretty tricky for really any athlete. You don't want to mess with those kind of injuries, especially baseball players, pitchers who, whether it's their plant foot or push off, whatever it is, you just don't want to mess with those. So hoping Paddock gets healthy here soon. I made a bold prediction I forgot who I said, and this is the boldest of predictions. I said Chris Paddock will be the best pitcher from here on out. That immediately went out of the picture when he got hurt. So that's unfortunate. But yeah, well, obviously this episode's about Mackenzie Gore. We love Mackenzie Gore. We think he's going to be a star in this league, and hopefully we see some starts here soon. I've brought up his ETA was 2021, and that's looking more and more likely as this goes.
All right. So then I just have one last question for you, or it'll come at the end. So I know you keep mentioning Gore as a guy that can come up and, kind of be a kickstart to the Padres rotation if he comes up and succeeds. Do you think that it's possible for any prospect, or does it have to be a top prospect like Mackenzie Gore? Because we've seen it with Kinnear. He only goes 3 or 4 innings, but, Gore has all this hype around him. And if he succeeds, do you think that pushes the other pitchers more than it would be like an Adrian Martinez if he came up and succeeded?
I think it can be any pitcher. You want any guy in your organization to be able to go up there and provide some really good innings for this team. However, if it is Mackenzie Gore, I just think that provides a little bit more of a spark because he's been this organization's top prospect. We've all expected a lot from him. People and everyone throughout the MLB has expected a lot from Mackenzie Gore. So kind of like Fernando Tatis when he was the first or second ranked prospect in every single farm system rankings. He comes out of the gate and is immediately one of the most electrifying players in baseball. Mackenzie Gore can kind of provide that to your team too. He's one of the most electrifying pitchers in baseball, and he's splattered all over these MLB network shows and ESPN, and we start seeing, like, for example, Chris Paddock in his 2019 year, they were labeling his start against Clayton Kershaw the phenom versus the legend or something. Obviously, he's not a phenom whatsoever. But, that'd be kind of the case here. So I just think Mackenzie Gore provides a little bit more of a spark. However, anyone in this organization can provide a spark for this team, a very much needed spark because, this team sometimes falls flat.
All right. With that, Isaac, do you got anything else to mention on this segment?
No, obviously, I want to hear about your opinions. That's about it, though. I know you got a lot of opinions about Mackenzie Gore, and I guess – to answer your own question, who do you think that he needs to be the spark? Or do you think someone else can be the spark?
I don't think he has to be the spark. I think any guy that gets called up that makes an instant quality start can kind of kickstart the rotation a little bit more than they kind of have. They've fallen flat, and hopefully Musgrove start and everybody else kind of just follows through along with what Musgrove did. I know Weather struggled a lot, but maybe they all work together and they all get rebound. But I think any guy that can get called up, I really want Adrian Martinez, though, to get called up because he's proven himself more and more. And Kinnear kind of just only gets to go 3 or 4. And if you're going to bring up Kinnear, why not bring up Adrian Martinez and piggyback them, so you can get 2 guys that can go 4 innings each and save the bullpen a ton. And both guys get MLB reps. I think that's the best way to do it. But I think any guy can do it. But I do feel like Gore, if he comes up and succeeds, that would be a huge kickstart for the Padres more than it would be any other guy because he has the most hype among the team. He's been the top-rated prospect for so long. He's been in the Padres organizations for so long. And it's kind of just like a kind of almost underdog story now if he comes out and succeeds because everybody was expecting him to fail. Everybody wants him to do good, but it kind of looked like he was going to fall apart and everybody kind of just gave up hope on him this season. So if he comes out and succeeds, I feel like that would be a bigger kickstart than any other prospect. And with that, probably end this segment. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe. We'll be here. We're going to have another episode out tomorrow after this. So, yeah. Bye.